One of my least favorite topics was about me and what would happen to me. It was clear that Danielle didn't want me to just be thrown on the street. Danielle realized that had she left the house to her family, that they would have most likely kicked me out of the house immediately. I still didn't want the house, but I also didn't want to have to move immediately either. I wanted some time to cope with all the feelings I wasn't dealing with at the time. I was suppressing a lot of emotions to be of service to Danielle. Danielle had asked the parents of Rose if it would be a problem if I get 6 months in the house. They agreed that would be fine. It was even more than I could ask for, but I knew I would need several months regardless. I was not making any plans beyond Danielle. However, Danielle had some guidelines for me to follow after she passed, which often led to the next big topic of discussion. Danielle demanded that I never have anyone in the house of a romantic nature. I agreed and would tell Danielle that I couldn't see myself moving on if I did for a minimum of a year. Out of principle and the fact that she was my wife, she deserved respect. Even though we had only been together 7 months, I still felt out of respect that Danielle deserved that because she was my wife. Danielle always had a hard time believing that I could wait, considering that many of the examples of widowers she knew about moved on within a month or two. The idea was appalling to me, considering that I know it would take me longer than that to come to terms with my own emotions. It wouldn't be fair to someone else if I still were hung up on my wife. It also wouldn't be fair to my wife to fill that void with something that needs time to heal. It was clear that Danielle didn't understand that I was going to need time to heal, but I knew that already. I had already been single for a year before meeting Danielle, which gave her a little reassurance. Even though the issue came up often, it rarely offended me. There were times that she would get stuck in a pattern of accusations, but I would usually put those quickly to rest. I never questioned my devotion to her, and it was unbreakable. Thankfully, I was not the only one to rise to the occasion. Danielle's friends were the ones that rose to the occasion, exactly when it was needed. At nearly 2 weeks without food or water, Danielle was becoming visibly weaker, but still holding on strong mentally. We all had to help her move to and from the bathroom, holding her up on the toilet and in the shower. I was always needed for showers since it was too difficult to hold her up without being in the shower too. I wore a swimsuit so I didn't scare the ladies. The showers had become a necessity because Danielle was nearing 2 full weeks without food and water. Incidentally, the lack of movement had created a low requirement for energy. We felt that is why her body was lasting longer than expected. After a little research, we decided that we could do a hot-cold treatment in the shower to get her heart rate up. We found this would help her use more energy, even though she was too weak to move on her own. The first couple of showers were very intense, considering I was the one who was holding her under a dripping shower. I could do the shower myself, but found it much easier to do it with help from the ladies. With Danielle becoming weaker, I had to do all the work to move her. Her frail body was becoming easier to carry as she continued to wither. She trusted me with all her heart when she needed my help. It was that trust and strength that helped both of us find the courage to face what was ahead. The new way of life was an adjustment. Danielle found it hard not having more things in the day to look forward to. Her meal schedule and her water schedule were huge parts of her day. Now those routines were gone, and she hated having idle hands. Danielle compensated by taking more control in her immediate life. Constant demands were common. There was very little that Danielle wanted us to do except wait on her hand and foot. We all did everything we could to ease her discomfort. I spent hours with a warm, damp rag brushing it gently across her skin. Not enough to hydrate, just enough to keep her comfortable. We did the same with ice cubes to keep her lips moist. Danielle appreciated the constant attention we were giving her. She deserved it after all the pain she endured. Danielle wanted all her pain to stop long before she quit eating and drinking. Although her body was shutting down naturally, it was still uncomfortable to endure. Constantly feeling the desire to eat and drink must be so challenging, although Danielle did it with such grace and ease. Danielle had an unbreakable will, and when she set her mind to do something, she did it to completion, eventually leading to a problem developing. During a shower, the intensity from the hot-cold therapy had caused Danielle to lose consciousness. We weren't aware of it as we were holding her up, and she usually kept her head down. It was an experience that would change Danielle's expectations. For some reason, she felt the stress of the shower would help her pass sooner. I didn't understand the idea at first, but if it made her feel better, then I was willing to give it a try. She immediately began demanding 4 to 6 showers a day. Since it was nearing day 16, we were all surprised that Danielle was not facing imminent death. The nurse even explained that she was holding on, explaining it was now up to Danielle to allow herself to transition. This unwavering motivation to live was truly part of Danielle. She was a fighter and never gave up on a fight. I began reminding her that it was okay to go. She didn't have to hold on for any of us, and we wanted her suffering to be over too. None of us wanted Danielle to go, But after seeing the pain she was enduring, we understood why it was important to support the current plan of action. None of us wanted to lose Danielle, but the truth is the disease had taken her from us long before she decided to end her life. Surprisingly, this action also returned her to us briefly. It was almost harder for the ladies to watch this return, only followed by a very rapid decline. Following day 16, we were not dealing with the same Danielle. After more than 2 weeks of no water, we were left with a mind that could think of nothing else. The desire for water drove her every desire. She would constantly tell us how sweet water was, how much she just wanted to put an ice cube on her lips, how she just wanted to lick a wet rag or take another shower. There was no relief for her if we were to respect her wishes. We had all realized that the showers were doing nothing but keeping her hydrated. Everyone decided that we should discontinue the practice. We ended up making the situation worse because Danielle still thought the showers could help end her suffering. She saw the shower as her solution. Holding this boundary would be my ultimate test. For over a month, I had maintained the calm composure that Danielle needed. Now it all came down to these last few days. Danielle started with a constant barrage of either asking for some ice or being in the shower. It wasn't easy for me to sit there for hours just telling her that it wasn't time for a shower. Even more challenging was telling her that we would have to wait for another ice cube. The ice cube would just be used on her lips to prevent dry cracking. However, ice would become a constant source of water if I left it with her. She didn't want to drink any of it for the first 2 weeks. She even spat out any water that I got in her mouth. Now, her normal reactions were being overridden by the reaction of survival. Since she wasn't ready to die subconsciously, it makes sense that her subconscious mind would put up such a fight. Her will to survive was only prolonging her suffering. As much as she wanted her suffering to stop, she also secretly just wished she could live a happy, healthy life. She struggled with this the entire time she was sick, and the people in her life at the end were instrumental in making sure the end of her life was everything she deserved. Now I was only getting maybe a 1 or 2 hour break before Danielle would throw a tantrum to have me back in the room. It was difficult at times for me to ignore the cries for my return. However, I understood that sleep and rest were equally important for me to function properly. Danielle wanted total control, but if I left, she lost that control. Danielle would spend hours asking where I was, which made things a bit more challenging for myself. The women did a great job at making sure that I would get some rest no matter what. I will always be grateful for their efforts. 18 days of Danielle's powerful presence had worn out most of the women involved. Several of the women worked in rotations to keep an extra hand around the house. We would all rotate sleep schedules to keep ourselves rested. It was not easy with Danielle crying for showers or me. They did their best to keep her calm, but she was becoming more and more difficult to manage. She attempted to drag herself to the shower on several occasions. However, I was the only one who could easily put her back into bed. I could see that Rose's mom was becoming exhausted. Danielle's behavior was starting to become overwhelming for all of us. The teamwork helped us all maintain our sanity. Days of little to no sleep were having a more dramatic impact on our volunteers. I completely understood that some of them needed to take some time away. However, I wasn't expecting what happened next. Several women commented on my endurance through everything we had gone through. They told me how impressed they were that I was able to handle this situation for so long. After months of going through hell, it was nice to have a little validation that we really were going through hell. This was the first time I felt appreciated for everything that I had done for Danielle. I'll admit, it felt unbelievably amazing. Not once had someone recognized me for all the hard work I had done for my amazing wife. Amazing was something that everyone present with Danielle felt. There could be amazing sadness or amazing joy, but either way, it is extraordinary. Danielle had truly manifested the people and tools that she needed to make a successful transition from this world to the other. She brought in people that at perfect times provided tools for growth, which still blows my mind when I think about how Grace showed up in our lives. Amazing that we met the day her mother was diagnosed with cancer. I had no idea the amount of learning that I would gain from observing her. It was Grace's demeanor that I tried to emulate every day. Next to Danielle, she would be my greatest teacher, without even knowing that she was teaching me. As much as I learned from her, I feel she learned so much from Danielle. There were so many insights Danielle shared that I felt were going to help Grace with caring for her mother. Grace even put off seeing her mother because of a promise to Danielle. Grace stayed several weeks longer than she was expecting because she felt it necessary to keep showing Danielle support. This selfless act of support did not go unnoticed by Danielle, and her love and compassion towards this almost stranger grew to new heights. Danielle truly loved Grace for the person that she was, and it was her honor to share with Grace a bit of wisdom. This wisdom was to support her mother fully, even if she doesn't support her mother's plan of treatment. We had faced the opposite problem with Danielle's family, and she didn't want to see the same problem happen between her and her mother. I feel the universe rewards us sometimes for doing things for others. I think my wife was a big gift in that aspect. Grace had already been the greatest gift to manifest at the end of Danielle's life, which is why what happened next wasn't a complete surprise. Grace came over that day as my relief, which after another night of not sleeping was necessary. Surprisingly, I wasn't particularly tired at this point, and decided to read some comics to get my mind off of things. I also wasn't getting some needed nutrition, which usually involved a bag of popcorn and a bowl of cereal. Danielle wasn't crying out for my return, which is one reason I loved when Grace visited. They had a special connection that would forever be sealed in history. After only 30 minutes, Grace asked me to come into the room. There was a tone in her voice that expressed a sense of urgency. I could tell that she was concerned, and she commented that Danielle's breathing was starting to change. I observed the change, noting that her breathing was becoming slower and shallower. We both knew what that meant. I knelt on one side of Danielle while Grace knelt on the other. I am still grateful that it was Grace that was present with us as Danielle and I were facing this moment. I couldn't help but cry, and it was clear that I was saying my final goodbyes to my wife. As I looked into her eyes, I just reminded her again and again, it's okay to go. I also told her that she was loved, and that there is a beautiful place waiting for her. It was a miracle to see her acknowledge me at that moment and almost give her goodbye too. Grace and I sat there for what felt like just a moment now, yet it felt almost timeless. We sat there for possibly an hour, but I can't be sure. We remembered she asked us to log the time of her death. Danielle had asked because she wanted someone to do the star chart on it. It still is a grand event that we could be present for this star child as she returned to the stars from which we all came. Breath after breath, I just waited with her. The breaths became slower and longer in between, and it didn't look like she was suffering at all. Although I could see a fear in her eyes that slowly faded as she continued to grasp for air. I then witnessed acceptance as she allowed herself to fade with her last breaths. It seemed like an eternity between her breaths as they continued to slow. The final breath being a surprise to both Grace and I, as we weren't expecting another. I could feel her presence in the room even after her final breath. It was sad and beautiful all at the same time. The moment we shared was indescribable. We didn't wait too long to let the rest of the group know. They all arrived promptly, and I was asked if we could, according to Grace, let Danielle stay for 6 hours before we move her. It was supposed to help the spirit let go of the body during that time. It also gave us all a space to mourn together. We were all relieved to have helped Danielle through her ordeal. I had spent so much time being a caretaker, it was strange to have it all stop. It was very emotional, and as much as I wanted to escape the outside world, we had to let the world know. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to like, share, or comment on any of the free chapters from the website dancingbeyondcancer.com. It is a story that must be shared to help others face the challenges of cancer. More chapters available every Monday. You can support the author on dancingbeyondcancer.com by purchasing the book, making a donation, or making a pledge on Patreon. As always, thank you again for all the continued support.